Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Rethinking Addiction. Look who we have on with us today, Dr. Terri, the one and only Eddie. Good to see you,
Yeah.
Eddie. So,
Hey, good to
one
see
of
you
our
too.
colleagues. And so, first of all, we just today we're going to talk about offering what we have here at Cipriano Johnson, which is what we call specialty groups. You know, we actually have gender specific. Dr. Terri leads that intensive outpatient at night, and Eddie does a Spanish speaking, which is very important for that group as well. And so we want to kind of talk about why is that important to have those specialty groups when we talk about treatment. So, Eddie, why don't you start first? Just tell us a little bit about you. Welcome to the podcast, and then Dr. Terry's going to sling some questions at you.
Absolutely. I've been in the business now of counseling since 1996, and
Uh,
I've seen all walks of life, especially Latinos. And one of the things that the Latinos feel comfortable is being in front of another person that speaks their language, okay? Because they're somewhere familiarized with the person, okay? So I get a lot of Latinos that come in, they talk to me. I usually ask them where they're from because, as you know, there's so many Latin American countries. Okay, and sometimes the customs are a little bit different, but the belief system is mostly the same. Okay, they're really strong when it comes to family. Okay, so I usually go directly into the family. Are you married? Do you have any children? How things are going? Why? Because addiction affect all the areas of their life. One of the things that I noted that is a little bit hard for Latino is their sense of pride. Okay, they take a lot of pride on being just a Latino person, a Latino man or a Latino a woman. And that could be a barrier to recovery, just for the simple reason that it creates a closed mind. Okay, so I gotta go somewhere, somehow within the culture, and I explain today, let's take away just the race. Okay, let's talk about just being a human being and how addiction affect all the races the same way. Because as you know, addiction don't care what color your skin, where you're from, where you were born. Addiction is going to treat you the same way. And then sooner or later, because being a Latino man, telling this to a Latino man, they look at me and they start making sense of what's going on. They still don't want to be quote unquote labeled an addict or an alcoholic. Okay. Just because, they usually carry a lot of society's point of view, and there's a stigma behind all that. So the Latino man don't really want to be viewed that way. So it takes a lot of humility for them to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to listen to this man. I listen to what they have to say because it's predictable from case to case. So once they're predicting some of the consequences that come into their life, they're able to agree and say, yeah, I've been through that. I've been through that. Okay. And the one they haven't been through it, they will go through. Okay. Sooner or later, if possible, uh, depending on the case, I try to bring the family. Okay, just for the simple reason that the family carries such a powerful impact on them. I had a Latino that I treated. I asked him to bring the family, and I think he would bring one or two members of the family. No, he brought the entire family, even grandma and grandpa were there. Okay, and I was excited because I was talking to him in English because he sort of understands some English, but then I had to translate it into Spanish. So the family will understand what I was telling their family member. But this has been a struggle, for quite a long time. There's a lot of agencies that don't offer this service. Okay. So lately, whenever they find out that there's a Latino counselor somewhere, they usually request to meet with the Latino man because it's about having something in common. Okay, we both speak the language. Now the slums are different from one country to another. So I learning a lot about the country and they're learning a lot about my country, and at the same time, I can plug them into the recovery community just to make sure that they learn more about the concept of what it's like going through life without the use of chemicals. You know.
I think Eddie too, he's answered some of the questions I asked. Research showed this about 91% of the Latino population don't seek treatment.
Mhm.
And probably a lot of that has to do with the acculturation process, fitting into a dominant culture
Mhm.
often, works against their identity because a lot of them are big into their culture and all of a sudden having different belief systems, different ways of dress, different foods. It's
Mhm.
like anything else, when we say that alcohol and drugs is merely a symptom, it's a coping skill, that we address for something that's discomfort for us. And
Exactly.
so that was probably a lot of that
Exactly.
discomfort. And they also research showed the ones that did go on for a treatment had a hard time staying sober. Their outcomes were a little less. And could that be something to do with not having that many 12-step groups? Because that sense of belonging, just like you're just talking about,
Mhm.
is very strong. Neuroscience is one of the reasons that the 12-step programs work, for the sense of belonging. So after I was reading the research last night, I was thinking, that sense of belonging is something that is really
Yeah,
hard
no
because
doubt. And I have to agree with Dr. Terry. The Latino community, the culture is very strong within family and friends. Okay, and within the culture, the alcohol is also really strong. There's a lot of bravado in the Latino community, and also a lot of machismo within the Latino community, which the ego can take place. And then you add up a little bit of pride there, and you have the best combination of denial. Okay, so breaking through that is the hardest part to go when it comes to the Latino community. But the best part to do is just talk to them about family and how they using affected their family because they're really family oriented. Plenty of time when I go to Walmart, when I go places, I can immediately notice a Latino family. I look at them, they have their children, and I go by them and I say hi to them in Spanish. And they look at me like, oh, wow, this guy speaks Spanish because they don't know. Okay. And they really into religion. Okay. Most of Latinos are Catholics. Okay. So they have their own ritual when it comes to religion also too. Okay. So more than likely, it's about teaching that the 12 step of recovery, okay, is a guide to make progress into their life. That's all it is. It's not a ritual, okay? It just guides that will lead them to make some progress into their life. Now, one of the things that we don't have as much is AA Spanish groups. Okay, there are all some other places that starting to have some AA meeting. I went to some of them there.
That's in Jacksonville Beach.
Yes, in Jacksonville
It's got
Beach. Yes,
a meeting.
I went to some of those meetings, and what I love the most, and I was able to see the slogans of recovery in Spanish. Okay, the 12 step, the 12 and 12 in Spanish, the big book in Spanish. Now I noticed that the attendance was minimal. Okay, but we have to start somewhere. Okay,
Build it, they will come concept.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was in charge of ordering marketing materials for Rule 62. It has about 100 people on Saturdays. And I didn't pay attention, Eddie. And I ordered 20 books and I put them all up for everybody. And we started passing out books that needed it. And somebody raised their hand. It was all in Spanish. So they got to feel how a Spanish speaking person must feel in our groups. We're speak English so much. So we had a
Interesting.
laugh.
You could have done some research with
Yeah,
that.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah. It was
how do you
everybody. It took them
feel?
a while to raise their hand and say, I can't read this. Am I that drunk? But anyway, so one thing I learned in my education journey about multicultural competent counselors. See, what's great about Cipriano and Johnson is that here we are trying to serve a broad population. And you're right, addicts do not, the whole disease of addiction, alcoholism, doesn't care about your gender and doesn't care about your economic society, or any of that stuff. What it does care though is that you speak the language. Like I can't
yes.
imagine my empathy for someone sitting in a group that's trying their best to hear this wonderful message in their native tongue. And for any treatment center out there that doesn't have an Eddie or some sort of special group that says, hey, come to us. You don't have to let your brain go through 3 different levels to get to English. We actually have an Eddie right here that knows your culture. And also what Eddie does for all of us is he teaches us. He helps us become better as multicultural, competent counselors because I get to hear Eddie and say, what do you think, Eddie? Teach me more so that when Eddie's not here, we're able to serve the population as best as we can. I think that's just a wonderful gift of Cipriano and Johnson that I do not see across the Jacksonville market. Dr. Terri, one last question from you. Anything that's in your mind that you'd like to ask Eddie here as we come to a close?
No, not necessarily. Just what do you think in the future? Some things that we could make it easier for Latinos to ask for
Good
help. I know
question.
it's the ego thing. I know it's the culture. The acculturation process is a big one. And you brought up the church thing. The way America runs is kind of be shocking for a lot of people. But anyway, what is something that we in the addiction field or as fellow people with addictions could do to make it easier for Latinos, since asking for help is one of the main reasons 91% don't get the help they need.
It's just like anything. Advertising. Okay, they need to know, but we need to go to the center of where are they? We need to go to their communities. Okay, we need to talk to the communities about recovery, and then of course we gotta have all the information in their language,
Right.
so that they're able to actually read it. Okay, and once they realize, okay, this is the information that they're giving me, and they actually offer me a Latino therapist, then that will make a huge difference among them. One of the things that I usually tend to tell them when they come in, because, a lot of us, we suffer from a low self-esteem, even that we carry ourselves really well. Okay, I let them know, I'm not any better than you. Okay, I wear this to identify myself on who I am. And I said, but I'm not any better than you. I said, but I have something that you don't have yet, knowledge of recovery. And that's what I'm trying to work with you to see if you can grasp that knowledge. One of the things that I can guarantee is that their life will get better. And there's another thing that I can actually guarantee is if they continue to use, their life will get worse. The great thing about the approach in recovery is this very universal, especially within the AA community. I can honestly say it's one size fits all. Okay, if you go to meetings, if you find a sponsor, if you get a home job, okay, if you get involved in the fellowship, if you work the 12 step, the miracle will happen. Okay, and it's about changing the belief system. As you know, belief systems are really hard to change. So require a daily inventory of what I am today mentally. Okay, because their drinking is not a problem. Even though most people will look at it, oh yeah, they have an alcohol. No, their drinking is their solution. Okay, all right. They run to the alcohol because that is their solution. We need to figure out the psychological well-being. Where are they? Okay, and help them with their thinking, so that they can find other things that will be a solution instead of running to the drugs and the alcohol.
I like that. And we had at Cipriani Johnson address that we have a pamphlet now that's written in Spanish, and we have taken it to several places that the Spanish population tends to, places they attend, just to let them know that you are available.
Yes.
Because no one can identify with you like an alcoholic addict or like someone that's also Spanish speaking, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
Not to mention bringing up our founder here, Ron Cipriano, he had the insight to bring Eddie to us. I think that is a huge, we need to have that in every treatment center that, Dr. Terri and I could go to school, we could learn, we could try to learn Spanish, but there's nothing better in this field than to actually have somebody from the community that actually speaks the language, and so we need to advertise that more. You're right. And get it out there that there should be no one in any language or any ethnicity or any block at all from the 12 steps, because the 12 steps in any language saves lives. And it might have been written in a certain language 90 years ago, the predominant language at that time, but now it's around the world, translated around the world. And so I'm very proud of Cipriano Johnson for having Eddie, not only in our show, but also just to teach us and to be with us. If you have not spent time with Eddie, come see him. I promise you, your life will change. So thank y'all so much for your time
Thank you so
today.
much.
Thank you, Mike. And you have Eddie's information at the bottom,
I'll put
right?
everything in there and I'm not going to do it in Spanish. I will not mess that up, but I will put it in there. So
I was thinking though, we may try to work on like a little iPod you could put in Spanish where he could
sure.
make a little thing and we could send that around.
Whatever it takes.
Okay.
Right.
Good
Whatever.
job.
I love that. We'll end it with that. We're all in the field for the same reason, to save lives. So we'll end it with Eddie. Whatever it takes. Can you say that in Spanish, sir?
Lo que quiera, lo que tengo que hacer.
Amen.
Bye.
See y'all later, everybody.
Bye.
Okay,
See you
bye.
later, Mike. All right.